Hey everybody, it is Wintermute coming to you from the Think Tank. And today I'm going to talk a bit about threat projection from the Allies' perspective. Now, a lot of the core principles that I talked about with the Axis apply to the Allies in terms of threat projection. The most classic example probably being Britain and its navy. You know, it is a dominating navy, and wherever they decide to put it, it is an intimidation factor for anyone around it. Of course, their big problem is, you know, it. The navy is great, but until you can put boots on the ground, they're really not a threat, and that comes back to for the Allies less so. Not so much Russia as the common term, but America and Britain really need to be able to put transports into the water and get their people where they need to be. So, I've heard it said by a somebody I used to game with that the most powerful piece in all of Axis and Allies is the transport, because without it, your fleet is just it's just a bunch of boats. It can't take land. So transports are kind of a key piece of the strategy for the Allies and where they're going to put them. So in general, yes, transports are a way of projecting your threat and ability to move your people around. Now, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. I'm going to talk, okay, so obviously we know that's important, but one thing about the Allies one advantage they have is, unlike Germany and Japan and Italy, who are gearing up for war right away. They're at full economy. They know what their plan is, and they're basically going to execute it. The Allies, and the Axis have a motive to spend all of their IPP every turn, because when they get into a battle, when they get into an invasion, they want to win that right away, decisively, quickly, without much fuss, and then move on to their next target. So they want to be able to shock and awe, to overwhelm. So for them to spend all their IPPs every turn they have incentive to do that. The Allies don't necessarily need to spend everything they have every turn for IPPs. And the reason I say that is I played against a buddy of mine who would, whoever he played, usually he played Britain really well, and every turn he would put a couple IPPs off to the side, one, two, three, maybe four if you could swing it, and he would just build up a kind of war chest off to the side, and it would just slowly get bigger and bigger. Now, I don't know what this is going to become. I don't know what he's planning on doing with that as an Axis player. So in a way, this is Britain projecting a threat that I can't plan for, because I don't know what it's going to become. I don't know what he's planning on doing with it. And one thing now there's several different things you can probably think of right off the top of your head that, if you've got a stack of IPPs here that have been building up, what are you going to do with them all of a sudden to kind of make the Axis go, okay, whoops. Let me give you an example. Let's say he builds up, he is doing the things he needs to do as Britain. He is checking off that list of things. He's defending Egypt and the Suez Canal. He's fighting the war in the Atlantic to keep the subs from raiding his, trade lines and whatnot. And so he's checking off the list of things that Britain has to do to be able to stay in the war. But he is in a position where he doesn't need to spend all his IPPs every single turn, so he can save a couple every turn. So now we're getting into the point where it's later in the game. Britain's at war. France has fallen. Germany's getting ready to go into Russia, and now Britain is thinking about what it's going to do with this stack of IPPs that it has here. And Germany goes ahead and pulls the trigger, goes into Russia. And then what does Britain do? They take it, they spend it, and they put two more transports right here in the English Channel or wherever around Britain. They just drastically multiplied their ability to land any units wherever they want. Now, I'm assuming that they already have a transport or two up there from earlier in the game. So even if you had one, even if you kept one up there, even if you didn't keep any up there, all of a sudden now you can land four guys anywhere on the coast. Germany has to go, okay, I didn't plan for that because I didn't have to deal with that a turn or two ago. So I kind of kept my defense thin or my counterattack thin. Suddenly he's in a position where he wants to just go into Russia whole hog, and as far as he's concerned, okay, I'm keeping Britain under control. But then all of a sudden, he doubles his ability or triples his ability to land units and have staying power because the counterattack is going to be all that much more difficult. Well, now Germany is like, that's less resources I can send this way. He couldn't plan for that. It might have been different could he plan for that. Now he's having to shift units around he's playing in a way that he doesn't want to go back to my original point with the Axis. Britain is they were projecting threat with this that he couldn't really understand what it was going to be, and then when Britain put it down, he has to kind of address it and deal with it. Odds are he's not in a position to kind of go, well, he went from being able to drop 4 units with, and he had a couple Marines. Now he can drop 8 units wherever he wants. And I've only got about 6 or 7 units in Paris for the counterattack. And I really don't have much of a defense force on the coast. All of a sudden, things just became a lot harder for him. And he's going to have to either go, okay, well, he's going to land and I'll just have to fight him back. Or he's going to have to shift units from going this way to this way to be able to keep that at bay. So now another option is what if you're really able to save up and save up and save up, and then you drop, he goes into Russia or he gets tied up somewhere else, and then Britain drops 2 strategic bombers in one turn, and Germany goes, oh great, now I need to build more fighters, I need to do all this other stuff to be able to keep that under control. And now he's spending money he didn't necessarily want to, in a way that he didn't necessarily want to spend it. So he's not getting to play the game the way he wants to. And that's probably going to make Britain's job a little bit easier. Now, again, the pace of the game is more dictated by what the Axis are doing. And that's always going to be the case. But just think of that as an example of the unaccounted for IPCs or IPPs and how they're going to suddenly shift based on what Britain or even America, depending on the circumstances, builds. So, and America's another one where they don't have to. Now they don't start with a whole lot of IPPs each turn, so they're probably going to just upgrade a factory. Build a Marine or 2 just so they're available, little things like that. But once their economy starts ramping up on their way into war, they don't have to spend all their IPP and telegraph what they're going to do. And they actually have the ability they have such massive amounts of factory space. They can probably easily spend, if they have 70 IPP saved up, they can probably spend it over on the West Coast pretty easily because they still have like 3 medium factories on the water. Right there, that's nine units, not even counting the ports. Again, America can also do this. Well, I'm not going to show Japan what I'm going to do. I may move up a carrier or 2. I may get a couple things in the production queue, but he doesn't know when I'm going to finish them. He doesn't know how I'm going to, am I going to build a ton of bombers all of a sudden? And that may be another way of America kind of going, okay, well, I've got a ton of, okay. All right, Germany went to Russia. Time to build three strategic bombers. Next turn, send them to Britain, and the turn after that, start blitzing Germany. You don't have to telegraph that you're going to do something like that by building bomber after bomber after bomber every turn. Save up. You have major factories all over the place. So, that it's that kind of unknown that the Axis can't really know, and it gives you flexibility to react. If America puts all its money into an air force, and it turns out that they really needed navy to go after Japan, or they really needed more of a navy because Germany actually has played the navy game and done it well, and suddenly they have all these transports over on their east coast waiting to come over here to do Operation Torch, but they don't have the ships to protect them from the German threat coming from up north. Well, if you don't dump all your transports right away and you save up 30, 40 IPPs and see what Germany does, and see how that battle goes, well, then America can go ahead and go, oh, okay, I really do need to just build some destroyers and submarines to keep the German Navy under control. Then I can worry about building the transports and the troops to come over into Torch or up into Italy or whatever the case is. So in a way, it's threat projection, because they don't know, the Axis don't know what these IPPs are going to become. So they can only think about it, and it's also gives you a little more flexibility when the time comes. Now, that said, there are things you do need to do on the way to getting to that point. America may want to have some infantry and some Marines and some transports, and they might want to finish a couple capital ships on the way there. They might want to get their Air Force up and running. But America isn't like Britain, where it's spread out all over the globe trying to protect, all these different territories. So it's a little, Britain's a little more stretched thin. So building up a pile of IPPs to spend for Britain as aha, I've got you, Germany, and I'm gonna shove these in your face and make you have to deal with something you didn't plan on and you didn't have any idea was coming. It's a little bit harder for Britain. Not impossible, but it is a little bit harder because they're stretched a lot thinner. So in some ways, in summation, I guess the Allies' threat projection is different in execution, not necessarily in principle, but in execution than it is for a lot of the Axis. So think about it like that if you haven't already. That's kind of how I think about it. Is like I said, this is my threat projection in addition to whatever other units I may have on the board. Like Britain's Navy, and later on in the game, America's Navy, and things that the Axis have to deal with. So if anybody has any other points that they would like to make about Allied threat projection, feel free to leave comments. Maybe I missed something. Maybe I didn't account for something. Maybe I didn't explain something well enough. Maybe you think I'm just completely wrong. And, the Allies have to spend every IPP every turn, or they're not going to be ready for the war. There certainly are instances where that's the case. If things just go bad for Britain, and look, I can't, I need to put units out there to fight. That certainly does happen. And again, as with any sort of strategy, you've got to react to the game, the state of the board itself. While you would like to maybe do something like this, or you would like to have built up a bigger Air Force, or would like to have built up a bigger Navy, or would have liked to have done this, you know what? That's not how the dice fell. Literally, that's not how the dice fell, because you can't do that. You have to respond to what's going on the board. So it'll be up to you to make that decision on the best way to project threat when the time comes, and choose the right time to do it. Because I use the example of waiting till Germany goes into Russia. Well, maybe Britain thinks they're about to go into Russia and wants to go ahead and go, you know what, now I'm going to drop the transports and make him wait another turn. That's perfectly reasonable too. So again, if you think that anything to add or anything that maybe I missed, feel free to leave a comment, and hopefully we can get a discussion going about threat projection options and ideas for the Allies. And then I'm going to try to address Russia on its own as the common turn, but they're very different in that kind of the way it works for them. But that's a different video, maybe later this week. So this is Wintermute signing off from the Think Tank.